All right.
Great. Well, folks are gonna keep trickling in, but
Yeah.
welcome everyone. Happy Friday. Thank you all so much for joining us. My name is Ben Cadwallader. I'm LACO's Executive Director. And it's such an honor to be here with you tonight. Fantastic conversation planned with Bob Attia and Rob Brophy, two folks that I know many of you know very well. I'm going to hand it over to Bob in just a minute. Before I do, just a few quick things. One, I think you all know this by now, but we're collecting questions for a Q&A session at the end. So if you have questions for Rob, you can drop those at any point in the chat, and Coleman will collect them and facilitate the Q&A at the end with Bob and Rob. And of course, I'd like to thank our generous underwriters for this series and so many wonderful arts throughout Los Angeles. Terri and Jerri Kohl underwritten this series and allowed us to bring this to all of you at no cost. So huge thanks to them. And I also want to mention two wonderful upcoming events for us. We have the next episode of Close Quarters coming up. This is with the great Gil Shaham performing with LACO, making his LACO debut. We have a incredible episode. This may be one of the best of Close Quarters. Coleman just dropped the link in the chat. Gil learned a piece for us by the Chevalier de Boulogne, a violin concerto that you're not going to want to miss. And then he's also doing Fratres by Arvo Pärt, a beloved meditative piece. This is going to be a really special episode. That link is in the chat. And then I also want to mention we have our Meet the Moment Gala coming up in April. That is on April 18th. And it's just going to be a fantastic show, and we will have a portion that's available at no cost for everyone. And then for those that buy a ticket, we're going to do an interactive section beforehand that will include, and we're announcing this actually for the first time here tonight, it will include a live performance from Rob and Teresa. So there's information in the chat there as well, laco.org/gala. And I think that's all I have. So with that, it's my pleasure to introduce someone who, again, you all know, Bob Attia. Bob is a great friend of LACO, and to makes so many wonderful things happen for the arts, for classical music in LA. So Bob, thank you so much for jumping in, and the floor is yours. Take it away, Bob.
Thank you, Rob. Thanks for playing for us tonight, talking with us, and keeping everybody excited in our most wonderful orchestra on the planet. As you probably know, Rob has been a member of LACO since 2011, so we can toast his 10th anniversary with our orchestra tonight. He attended the Royal Northern College of Music in Manchester for his undergraduate degree, and then finished with a master's at Rice with a master's in chamber music. He also played viola on Yarlung's first Grammy-winning album with Antonio Lysy at the Broad, music from Argentina. It was fantastic fun. Thank you for that. Congratulations, Rob. Also, Coleman is going to put the link to the recent Los Angeles Times article that features both Rob and his wife, Teresa, in our chat. At some point, if you have not read it, it's wonderful. It talks about how when you see the Tenet movie, you can think of Rob and Teresa in the room where Rob is now standing, because they contributed a lot of music to the film. Rob, I would guess that about 80% of your performing time is making recordings. You are a famous studio musician, and probably 10 or 20% of your time you dedicate to live performances. This is probably the reverse of what many of our friends at the Los Angeles Philharmonic would experience in their work life. Now that you and Teresa are recording from your studios at home, how does 2020 and now beginning of 2021 compare with what you might call a regular year?
Yeah, well, hello, everybody. Good evening. It's a real pleasure to talk with everyone, to see everyone, and hopefully talk later into the Q&A. Yeah, that's a really big question. I mean, we're very lucky the fact that we are recording musicians, and then 2020 rolled along with the outbreak of the pandemic, and it was really, really difficult just because our books, like pretty much every other performing musician, just became completely blank. And at first it was, immediate dates that were just wiped away, and then it just chipped away, and then your book kind of became blank. And those questions that you kind of ask yourself when you haven't done anything or played for 2 or 3 weeks is I remember looking at Teresa, like I said, and they quoted in the article, we looked at each other and we're like, well, I don't really anticipate playing for a year. What that changes who you are a lot, because so much of our identity as musicians is performing and playing, and to have that taken away, your identity as a person changes, or it did. Certainly, it was something we had to wrestle with, and there were some very pioneering efforts very early on, when people realized that that this is not going to be a quick thing. Maybe we can get people to record as much as they can at home individually, and have somebody, the poor engineer has to put together like 30 to 50 people's individual recordings and make it somewhat of a whole thing. And that was very early on. It was actually Joel McNeely was one of the first to kind of jump on board, and that's Margaret's husband. He writes for this animated series on Fox, and he basically just said, let's make it work. And so we managed to do that and prove a point that it could be done. And everything kind of snowballed, really. But initially, very few people had equipment. I mean, normally you get called for something, and then you go to work and you crack open the book and sight read for the day, and then you go home. And then here, it's a case of, we didn't have any microphones, we didn't have any computers. We certainly didn't, that were powerful enough to power the software that's needed to record. I had to learn how to edit, engineer, everything. It was YouTube became my friend. I studied a lot, and like most people in this pandemic, they've learned something new, and it's been great. It's been really a great experience. But when it comes to workload, yeah, it's been a lot less. But Teresa and I have been incredibly lucky just to have any work. And I feel, just reading that article in the Times, it was a real eye-opener to not just people on the West Coast, but also on the East Coast that are really, really struggling. I mean, it's really tragic right now, how difficult it's been for so many musicians. And we're very thankful that we have something. And LACO has been certainly on the forefront of that pioneering move too.
Rob, have you heard anything from the studios about a likely reopening date when you might return in person? Are they giving you any projections? And then, as part of that question, do you anticipate any seismic shifts in the music recording industry for the studios?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it was around middle of June to late June that we kind of got the call that there would be a few recordings that would happen in the studios. There was so much legal wrangling between the studios and their lawyers, and with liability of allowing 50 people onto a soundstage, and what the protocols would entail. And it took the union, the studios, the lawyers a long time to figure that out. And eventually they came up with a really a situation where we felt pretty safe about it, and it was people, testing was done and it was taken very seriously. So I'd say July was really the first time that we went back in a small capacity, and they adjusted break times to be longer to kind of air out the room. They have these big loading docks that they can open out, so we would have some time to rest and maybe walk away and take our mask off, because it's challenging to play in a mask. I almost felt like wearing one tonight, but no. And then things, I think people felt like, oh, well, maybe it'll be a floodgate of stuff that happens, but it wasn't just post-production that shut down, it was all production that shut down. And it's slowly picked back up, but I don't know if that's really going to. There hasn't certainly been an indication that there's going to be a huge ramp up in work. Obviously, it's very hard for me to say. I'm the last to know. Being on the performing end, there's many layers of people before the lowly musician gets to find out whether they have a job. So. Yeah, it's as to the future, we can only hope that it gets back to what it was. I think the pandemic has changed everybody's business model, from music to finance to anything that involves gathering or office work. There's been so many companies that have said, well, we seem to be doing okay without this office, so maybe people can work from home more often, in the future. And that, who knows, maybe that will happen with recording too. Now that everyone pretty much has, a reliable setup at home, it's certainly not ideal for us because there's a lot more legwork for us, with preparing tracks and editing all our work, and so there is no substitute for being in the room together, and I think that's in our industry, that's the last thing, so but I'm hoping that things just literally go back to normal, but I think it's going to take some time, for this all to pass. I remember the writers' strike a long time ago now, like maybe 2007 or so, and there was I think it was quite a while, but production, and we remember seeing a dip in work then, and this is just a much bigger thing, so it could take a while to really ramp back up.
You've made me realize something that LACO has done that might relate directly to this. Thanks to Ben's leadership and Ruth's and Kunig's generosity hiring James Dara, LACO has maintained a healthier traction with our audiences and gained new ones than I think anybody anticipated. Made us very proud. In fact, it seems that our little orchestra is looking very big and important on the world stage using these new metrics. Given that so much of your world is in the recording studio anyway, does it feel like this has been a comfortable transition for you?
Yeah, I mean, definitely LACO has been on the forefront, and you can see that just looking at other organizations' efforts during this time. I think LACO's been really well positioned just because they are small. We are small. The overhead is small. We're able to pivot very easily, I think, and I also feel like the musicians are up for pretty much anything, and especially when you combine that with the amount of the lack of work or the lack of artistic inspiration that we've had for so long, and then suddenly it was like, hey, why don't we do this? And it's certainly different, having this medium of me being here and you being at home, and us not being able to meet, it's really made it a big challenge to incorporate some kind of visual element, I think, more than just sitting down and watching a concert on Zoom, which or on YouTube, which is not ideal, and it's very, very hard. It's hard for an audience member. It's hard for a musician to sit through that too. And I think having something, an audio-visual component to it is definitely striking, and you can see by the numbers that it's attracted a lot of people, and people that we would necessarily have come to LACO concerts. So that's definitely a silver lining.
Rob, what, as a musician, might you guess would be a healthy balance moving forward after the pandemic for how live audience events and virtual online events with potential worldwide reach might coexist happily for our orchestra?
Yeah, it's certainly something that I think you can look into. I mean, there's no doubt that the advent of YouTube has become this all-encompassing thing that I think any organization has to take seriously if they're going to have exposure outside of their immediate area. But once again, just being from my musician's hat on, there's no substitute for us than having that 5 days of rehearsal, walking out on stage and playing a concert, on a Saturday and Sunday, and it's been thrilling doing the recordings in person, but still there is that immediacy, that lack of the lack of contact that we've had with the energy that is the audience over there. So I think it can be certainly incorporated. That's going to be somebody else's job, not mine, I'm sure.
You're making me realize that one can also ask the same sort of question of the audience. I don't happen to be a fan of performance art. I'm leery about mixing media, but it seemed to me that LACO's recent Soldier's Tale the other evening was a tremendous success. Granted, it's a performance piece that involves all different kinds of theater, but I thought it worked really well. How do you think altering our recipe with traditional performances, and how does it affect our audiences? How does it affect perhaps our new audience members to have this mix up in presentation, more options, in other words?
Yeah, I think if any organization is careful that they pick works that do have something like Soldier's Tale that is narrative driven, is something that is very easy to combine with some other element, some other visual element. I think the lines get a little bit blurry, or that's a better word, I can't think, but the lines get a little bit muddled. I feel if there is some kind of juxtaposition of a visual element that is incongruous with the music, and it's kind of left to you to interpret that. I think to have something curated that is meaningful in a wider audience rather than more esoteric is going to be more successful, I think, in LACO's brand. And I'm not saying that it's catering to people that are not capable of processing something more modern, because we've been champions of new music for the entirety of the orchestra's life. But I think that steps have to be very carefully taken when putting certain visual elements along with music if they don't fit. Yeah. does that make sense? I don't know.
Did anything in your conservatory training prepare you for this last year?
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think anyone was prepared for this. You know, I've been out of college for 20 something years, and certainly, and Teresa and I have had this conversation together too. You know, she was at Juilliard and IU, and I was in England and at Rice. Back then, there was very little effort put towards the business of music. I think that's probably a little bit different now. I don't think the atmosphere of teachers producing soloists in an unrealistic fashion, I don't think that's as prevalent as it was. You know, I think orchestra studies and excerpt classes and stuff like that, I think that is becoming much more mainstream and required, where people have to have realistic expectations that when they go into this profession, that they are armed with as many tools as they can to make a living and make a career of what they're doing. I wish that there had been, when I was at school, many more opportunities to look at arts administration, grant writing, that kind of thing. I think it's really missing. Oh, it was missing. Maybe it's not now. It's so hard for me to say because it's been 2 decades since I was in an institution. But did it prepare us for the pandemic? No, and there were definitely moments where you look at yourself and say, well, what are we gonna do? So yeah, I think the best advice I can say to any musician is save some money for that rainy day or year.
May it rain a little bit more in Southern California. Going back to your conservatory times, do you have any favorite memories from your training in school?
Do I have? Yeah, I mean, there was a camaraderie at my college, the Royal Northern College of Music in Manchester, that was it was really great. It felt like kind of a golden period, and maybe, I'm sure everyone feels like that when they're at college, but there were some real characters and some really influential people around me at the time, and then when I moved to the States, it was a different experience, but one that was really fantastic. I had such a great time at Rice. That place felt like a family. That is a very special music school there. I encourage any parents out there with kids or grandparents with children in their family that are musicians to seriously investigate it, because it's a good place to be.
Speaking of those kids, what has it been like for you and Teresa with your kids home these past 12 months? Are there any special highlights or emergencies that have resulted?
No emergencies, thankfully, but highlights. I mean, look, I really feel this has been the silver lining of the whole thing. Has been the fact that we've had so much time with our girls. That they're 6.5. They're twins. And they're probably running around somewhere here. But it's been amazing just to watch them this year in a time that we would never have had before. Often during weeks we would be leaving at 8 in the morning and getting back 11 at night, and that would be it. It was this kind of enforced family time has been the silver lining for us, definitely. But it's definitely made work challenging since then. We kind of have to trade off a lot of the time, especially when recording here. Often this window gets tapped on when somebody wants something, and it's ruined the odd take or something, but you know, no, it hasn't ruined as many takes as the parrots, the gardeners, the helicopters, I mean, rain, thunder. Yeah, we've had it all. So,
Rob, I remember the day that your daughters were born and the pictures that you sent, you and Teresa sent out. It seems like about a week and a half ago, but wow, 6.5 years.
yeah.
I remember how scared I was. You weren't frightened, but I was petrified when you and Trevor were running somewhere near Santa Barbara and you broke both of your arms.
Right, I did.
And you were laid up for a while. You never seemed to be worried at all that you would rebound perfectly. But did you ever wonder during that healing time whether you might become an investment banker or a chef or something else other than music? Or I guess what I'm really asking is, if you had not become such a successful violist, what profession might you have steered yourself toward?
Well, I thought I was going to bounce back from it a little quicker than Teresa did, because I was convinced that I could still play the concert that night that I was up there for. But I had some pretty major contusions here, and I had multiple breaks in this arm, and it all needed surgery. But I didn't know that immediately, and I was convinced that I could I was like, no, stay there, it's fine. I'll play the concert and I'll drive back. The 101's fairly straight. I can just do this. No, anyway, once that delirium had passed, my surgeon was amazing, and he thought I would be 6-7 months not playing, and I was back in 8 weeks, and I was, I worked really hard to get back. There wasn't any doubt in my mind anyway that was going to happen. But if something else, I mean, that question has come up with Teresa and I certainly in this last year of, well, if this really doesn't turn around, what do we do? And do we look at other careers, which is really hard when you're in your mid 40s. And I mean, there's so many people have had to make that decision. And I don't think we're going to have to do that. I hope not. But and it certainly wouldn't be investment banking. I love cooking. It's a big part of food. I love it, and I'm trying to instill that into my children too. And so we cook. That's been a great thing too. Normally we would never be able to eat together apart from maybe some breakfast in the morning, but we've been able to eat virtually every meal together, and that's a really fantastic thing that we haven't always had. So I'm thankful for that.
Rob, I think you told me that you were going to play the prelude from Bach's D minor second cello suite.
Yeah.
Would you be so kind as to tell us a little bit about it and how you chose it for today? And then I'm supposed to remind you that when you do play, to please adjust your mic down to 50%.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to play the prelude, the opening movement of Bach's second cello suite in D minor, BWV 1008. It's just such a incredibly haunting, heart on sleeve piece of music that I've always resonated with. And I just it just seemed like the kind of nice Friday evening sit back and enjoy music. So that I'm gonna set my microphone levels. I'm still learning how to do this, so hold on 1 second. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rob. That was beautiful.
Thank you very much.
One question came in during our earlier conversation that I think relates to the question we were asking each other about training in the conservatory for pandemics. And somebody asked, how would you incorporate this kind of risk? Ecological risk was the word. Maybe the person meant economic risk and threat into a performer's curriculum in school. How might we learn from this pandemic for future musicians, generations?
Yeah, I think being able to have as many, it's a horrible phrase, as many strings to your bow as possible. I think having at least some experience or education, like I said, in arts administration, understanding everything of what we do from all angles, so that if we do have to move away, because of injury from playing or that kind of thing, and pedagogy too, like learning about teaching and that kind of thing. I think it's having just a very much more holistic approach would be very helpful, rather than concentrating purely on performance. I mean, obviously we have to learn how to play and be as best as we can. And so I think the tools that most teachers provide you with are the ones that allow you to try and get a job. Interestingly enough, I feel like this pandemic is going to open up many, many, many doors to many young musicians that are coming out of conservatories and universities right now, just because the numbers of people that have decided to retire, that have left job, or have, I think that's going to be a huge opportunity in the coming 2 or 3 years for young players to really take advantage of. So my advice would be to start practicing now and get ready for those auditions, because there's going to be an absolute flood of auditions. So great for those people right now, but let's hope this doesn't all happen again at some point in the future, or at least maybe we've learned some lessons from that. But save your pennies for those rainy days.
I'm remembering presentation the dean at USC Thornton School, Rob Brophy, gave for us at one of our annual meetings. He was talking about the music industry program at USC and how much they're ramping that up to try to support musicians in a broader fashion, as you were just indicating. And I help out at a class at UCLA once a year in music industry and law that I think is also helping to broaden students' abilities beyond their instruments, which is probably very welcome. We have another question.
Yes.
Let's see. Jeanette asks if you would be so kind as to tell us something about your beautiful instrument.
Well, that's a really interesting question because right before the lockdown, I found myself in Germany. I flew back from Germany on the 5th of March last year, I think it was, with this instrument. So I am very fortunate that I was in the position to even find this instrument. It's a modern instrument. I'm the first one to perform on it. It's made by a really incredible maker called Stefan Peter Greiner, and he is based in in Bonn, but also in London. And and he doesn't normally make this size of instrument. This is kind of a larger model than he normally makes. And so I literally reached out and said in February last year and said, do you know if you have anything? And normally there's an incredible wait list of 6 or 7 years for these things. And he said, well, funnily enough, if you can get yourself to Bonn, there's one thing, a deal that fell through. And if you want to come and try it. So I did. Teresa said, go do it. And I came back, and when I was there, I totally fell in love with it. And I also fell in love with Bonn. What a great city that is. And I was so fortunate. I mean, obviously we knew that things were about to get pretty messy, but I managed to meet the curator of the Beethoven Museum in Bonn and had a private look around the library, and she showed me some incredible manuscripts of like Opus 59 quartets and the Opus 18 quartets. I mean, it was incredible. And she was she basically had to usher me out the door and say, I have all this stuff to do. We're traveling. The museum is essentially traveling for the entirety of 2020 because of the Beethoven's anniversary. And of course, that all came crashing down. So I was very fortunate that it happened then, and it was so this is a 1.5-year-old instrument. I know it looks older to some people, but it's just really beautifully made, and I'm very, very happy.
Well, the viola is very lucky to be in your hands, Rob. Thank you for today. Thank you to the Los Angeles Chamber Orchestra and to our friends Terri and Terri Kohl, who underwrite this series. Ben, can we turn it over to you for some closing remarks, and thanks to everybody. Very much appreciate your time, Rob.
You're welcome, most welcome.
Absolutely. And Bob, thank you. I know that's not an easy thing to jump in and facilitate a conversation in this unusual format. So thank you for jumping in, and Rob, really beautiful playing. And because we have just one more minute here, Colin, if you wouldn't mind spotlighting Rob again. Rob, I know you play in a lot of other than LACO, you do in the studios. You also have your string quartet, and I'm just wondering if you wouldn't mind sharing what you've been up to with your other chamber music obligations, and maybe some of what you're excited about in the future. And we'd be happy to help you plug something. Maybe we can drop a link in the chat.
That's really nice. We were the New Hollywood String Quartet that both Teresa and I play in with Andrew, the principal cellist in LACO, and Raphael Wishik. We were playing the second annual Chamber Music Festival that we started back in 2019, and here in South Pasadena, and obviously that just couldn't happen. So it was. In that festival in 2019, we performed the entirety of Brahms's chamber music repertoire in 8 concerts, I think it was. It was 8 consecutive.
Incredible.
Yeah, it was amazing. And we had some just unbelievable players from all over the world that we were, and they all said yes to come back. And obviously that didn't happen. So, and that was going to be a Schubert and Beethoven collaboration. And so there is talk very recently of some very a very much reduced effort that could be done this probably in the fall, because it would have to be outside somewhat, and we don't want people to be baking too much in the California sun. So look out for that. It'll probably be I would think about 3, maybe 4 concerts that we're planning for the festival in the fall of 2021.
And that was called Summer of Vienna. Am I remembering that correctly?
Right, yeah, exactly, yeah.
We'll have to call it the fall of.
Yeah, it'll be
maybe not the fall of Vienna. That means it's got weird connotations. Okay, well, that's exciting, Rob. Anything else you're excited about?
we did a few of these recorded Zoom things for various other organizations, but it's really been a case of knuckling down here at home and just trying to keep the kids busy and teach them. They're in the middle of their Mandarin dual immersion as well at school, so we're having it's kind of crazy, but we wanted them to learn a language, and that was what our school offered here in the public school, so that was what we're doing.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That is amazing. Last night, Rob, I watched The Five Bloods, which I believe, and that had just a killer score, by the way, from Terrence Blanchard. And you played on that score, yeah?
Yeah.
Would you mind just ripping through a couple of the highlights from scores that you've played on recently? And then what do you have, if you can tell us, in the pipeline coming up?
Well, yeah, that one, anytime we get to work with Terrence is a really pleasurable time because, well, he works really quickly. And, anytime Spike Lee's there too, it's hilarious when the two of them get together, and, but always emotional films that he that Spike Lee uses and creates. And that was really, really fantastic score. As to others, we did, there's a Disney animation that I think just came out, Raya and the Last Dragon, that looks really fun. The girls are excited about that one. And we just finished another Disney Pixar one called Luca, which is it's set in Italy, which looks really fun. Lots of TV stuff. But yeah, there's fun stuff coming down the pipeline, I think. So, yeah.
That's really wonderful that it is starting to warm back up, even though you have to do it from your home studio there. That's really exciting.
It's definitely a mix. I would say like it's 50-50 at the moment of home and in studio. So,
well, one of the things, I don't think we've officially announced this yet, but for the April capture for Close Quarters, we have actually outgrown the space at Oliver Hersel Hall, and we're going to be at Fox Studios, which is right. That's like your office, but it's this really neat thing where we have you and your colleagues are there all the time, but LACO has never actually been there in this capacity. So that's going to be an exciting kind of weird homecoming for you guys. Full circle for all of us. But Rob, really, thank you for jumping in tonight. And Ruth asks, are the girls around to say hi? Or Moose, I would add, your dog.
Say hi. Oh yeah, they're coming.
Oh, good. Okay. Thank you, Ruth. Excellent question.
Oh, you want me to lift you through the window? Wow.
Oh boy.
Hold on a sec.
Yeah, put down that instrument.
Wait, I think Moose is going to want to climb in.
Can you lift me from the window?
Oh, no.
Oh boy.
No, Moose wants to come in too.
Hi, girls.
Let me show you around here, and then you can.
All right.
If I can do this. Well, there's Moose. He wants to come in.
Hey, Moose. Oh my gosh, what a cutie. What kind of dog is Moose, Rob?
Bernese Mountain Dog.
Ay vey.
He's basically the brother of the girls. And
okay. Oh, so sweet.
do you want to say hi to everybody?
Hi.
Hi.
Hey, what's that circle doing there?
Girls, what do you think about your dad being in all these movies and TV shows?
I like it.
It's pretty cool.
Don't look at the light.
Don't look at the light. Good.
All right.
Well, we've got hi girls from and Moose from Renee Brinkmeyer. So who is this, Rob?
This is Saskia. And hold on. This is Mira.
Somebody screenshot this.
Then
Very nice to meet you both.
you too. Oh,
Thank you for gracing us with your presence, and with great respect to you and your musicianship, Rob. This has been the highlight of the video,
thanks.
the highlight of the talk.
Yeah, exactly. Just the case.
Sorry. Oh, wow. Well, it's really nice to meet you two. Hopefully we can do this in person someday. And to all of you out there joining us from home, thank you again so much. This is a really special evening. Bob, thank you again for hosting. And don't forget this coming Friday, Gil Shaham makes his LACO debut on Close Quarters. And then we have our fabulous gala, Meet the Moment, coming up in April. Those links are in the chat. And of course, you'll be hearing from us more. In the meantime, everybody stay safe. We miss you. Stay hopeful, and we will see you soon. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Bye.
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 Thank you, Ben. Thank